When setting up Coopman, we really had the goal of creating a business that was long lasting, that had a legacy, and that ultimately stood for something more than excellence in recruitment. And when we saw the B Corp certification and the framework, it really resonated with us because it gave us the platform from which to really build from, and that allowed us to focus on employee and social impact initiatives. And I suppose it gave us the confidence as well that what we were already doing was good. Being a B Corp, it really, when you look at decision making, it has a huge influence on how you run the business. I suppose it forces you to make decisions, whether they're large or small, in the present, and how ultimately what you're implementing, whether it be policies or programs through to the stationery you use, and how that's fitting in with the B Corp framework. But it also is very forward looking. So you set goals and targets that you want to achieve over the next 3 years before you recertify, which always forces you to move the business forward in a positive way. Probably seen B Corp have a huge impact when we look at our employee um, initiatives that we run. But I think the greatest impact that B Corp has had is just the overall alignment of our values. It's really helped us to drive initiatives that tie to our values, which ultimately create a clear identity. So if you're working with Koopman as a client or as a candidate or even as an employee, it's very clear who you're working with and what we stand for. So that's where I believe B Corp's had the greatest impact. When I think back to the initial certification process, one of the biggest learnings that I found was that you absolutely have to document everything within your organization. When you go through the process with B Corp, it's very evidence based. So when you say that you're doing certain things within the organization, ultimately you've got to be able to prove it. So that was the biggest learning, was ensuring that we, fully documenting everything, and it also forces you to look to parts of the business that maybe you're not thinking about day to day, which is fantastic to help you, run a better governed business. We're now going through the recertification process this year, and I suppose my biggest learning so far is that there's just so much more that can be done. When they're asking you, do you have X, Y, and Z in place, and you realize that maybe you don't, or you could be doing more. It just goes to show how far this framework can really push your organization to have such a great impact in many different areas. My advice for other businesses that are considering the B Corp certification, I would go onto the B Impact Assessment. It's a free online tool where you can go through all the questions that they ultimately ask you, see how you perform, see if you'll actually be certified, where you need a score of 80, and have a look at where your gaps are, maybe what documentation is required. Outside of that, engage with the community. It's a growing community here in Ireland. It's gaining huge impact in the UK as well. So speak to other B Corps and do your research, but be 100% sure that this is the path that you want to go down. Ultimately, if you're looking for certification or an external validation, there's probably a lot easier ones to get than this one. This really has to be fundamentally ingrained in your business and something that you're going to drive forward and work with over the next number of years. So really be sure, be 100% sure before fully committing, but there's a lot of ways that you can understand if it's the right path before doing so.